It's the do not draft list, the list you need going into your drafts with Jamey Eisenberg right now on FFT Express. All right, Jamey, how do you define your do not draft list? There's got to be a little bit of nuance to it, I assume.
I don't have a do not draft list. There's not one player that I will not draft if they fall to the right spot. So
right.
There are players I'll avoid at cost.
Right.
And that's, I think, the only way you should approach this. So, for example, if you are not a Justin Jefferson, you're not in favor of Justin Jefferson because of Sam Darnold, you will probably pass on him for most likely Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, maybe Saquon Barkley or Jonathan Taylor. I don't think he'll fall that far, but that's the point.
You wouldn't do that though, right?
I would not do that. No.
Yeah. Right. Let me start off with this one. Michael Pittman has been a do not draft guy for me. I want to get you just because he's a hot topic now. And we saw what the Colts passing game looked like, which was not heavily concentrated on Pittman at all. Like Richardson had a bad game, but also they didn't really run the ball that much. You think they'll do more of that? And Mitchell was involved, and Granson was involved, and Pierce was involved, and all. I think 2 targets for Pittman. So I haven't been drafting him. Yeah, I don't think you draft him a lot either. I know there's a spot probably late in round 4 where you'd take Michael Pittman, but what are you thinking right now?
So his ADP has actually fallen to late round 4, which is a little surprising, given how things have, the season that he had a year ago. Again, I think if you're targeting him early, I don't know if Heath has changed his rankings. I know he's very high on Michael Pittman. So like when I see Heath draft him, I kind of cringe a little bit because he's typically been, I don't know recently, but in a few of our early drafts, it was like at the 2-3 turn. Like there's no way I can get behind that. So the receivers that I tend to avoid at their usual expected cost are Davante Adams, Mike Evans. You've heard me say this a lot because of their age. Mm-hmm. Michael Pittman and DJ Moore because of their situations. I don't think that Pittman's going to necessarily dominate targets like he has. And Richardson is not going to be a polished passer yet to the point where you can trust him, or at least to get fed targets that are going to be the type of targets that you love in this offense. And then DJ Moore, just because of the added weapons that the Bears have. I think all those guys are still worth drafting as number 2 caliber receivers, but I just tend to avoid them based on where they go.
Okay, so those are some receivers that Jamey is not drafting. How about at running back? Let's go to running backs on your do not draft list.
So again, it's based on typically cost of where these guys end up going. I found myself recently passing on Derrick Henry. Not that I don't want to have him on my team, but I found myself passing on him in the second round, where initially I was taking him in round 2. Now I wouldn't take him until the middle of round 3, and by that point he's usually gone.
Hey, well, I love it. I feel better now because that's
it just felt like it was too soon to take him in round 2 based on I was thinking about this. Why would I take Derrick Henry in round 2 with the hope he's going to score a lot of touchdowns, as opposed to not taking Raheem Mostert in round 5 or 6, who just scored every touchdown in the world, right, and led the NFL in that position, and they're both 30 plus years old. So I just dropped Henry a few spots and moved Mostert up a few spots. I don't typically take Aaron Jones and James Conner. As you can see, age for those guys and where they go. Jones, this is more of an ADP as opposed to our drafts. But Jones and Conner go in the round 4-5 range. I wouldn't take either one until basically round 6, and they're usually gone by then. So those are the running backs that I tend to avoid the most. And I know we're going to differ on this, but I'm getting a little bit more concerned about Alvin Kamara as well, just because Taysom Hill is going to steal touchdowns or do something to, annoy us in the backfield rotation. And the offensive line could be really bad. His receptions are going to be what saves him, and that's fine. So it's not like I've dropped him tremendously. But for me, when I look at that group of guys of Achane, Mixon, Walker, Jacobs, I have it right now. Jacobs, Walker, and I feel like they're in a tier of their own. And then Mixon, Kamara, and after that. And I just don't love taking Kamara even around 4. He should go there, but I don't love taking him there.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get into that, I definitely agree. Jacobs is in a tier of his own. Walker has not done, based on last year, Walker should not be in the Jacobs tier because he had very little involvement in the passing game. So,
but you're projecting out though. That's the thing.
I don't know, but I don't know that we should. I think there will be more catches for him for two reasons. One, he's good at it. He should do more. And two, they're just going to run more plays. They were dead last in plays last year.
Yep.
It's just going to help. But I don't know that they're just going to completely forget about Zach Charbonnet. There could be a situation where in week one we go, oh, wow, this was much different than we thought. But that's fine. I prefer Kamara to Walker in full PPR and Walker over him in half PPR or non. But Kamara, I guess the pushback I would give is this. 3 years in a row, Kamara has been a pretty uninspiring running back. He's averaged 3.9, 4.0, 3.7 yards per carry. He has not had a run longer than 30 yards. He has scored 5, 2, and 4 rushing touchdowns in those seasons. Taysom Hill has 16 rushing touchdowns to 11 for Kamara over those 3 years. And I want to say their offensive line has been bad for pretty much the entire time. So I just don't think anything has really changed for Kamara.
He's older. That's the thing.
Yeah, he is, absolutely. But he will catch a lot of passes.
Let me ask you this, though. If he goes from 75 in 13 games to 60.
That would have been 2022, where he was the number per game. He was the number 19 running back in non-PPR, 14th in half PPR, and 13th in full PPR. We had 57 catches in 15 games. And he scored 4 touchdowns the entire season.
That's the season right there that scares me.
Yeah, but with those 57 catches in 15 games, it still pushed him to RB 13 per game,
which is I think I have him ranked 14 or 15.
Right.
You know, so.
All right, I'm sorry. I took a little bit too long here. I waited to take a break. Let's take a quick break on FFT Express. We'll be right back. All right, those are some running backs and wide receivers. Give me a few quarterbacks and tight ends that you're not drafting typically.
I'm typically avoiding Dak Prescott really as the only top 12 quarterback right now. I'm also not drafting the top 3 guys where they will most likely go. So I'm almost never going to draft a top 3 quarterback because round 2, early round 3, I just don't take quarterbacks there. If you do, you're getting 3 great players. Hopefully we're getting, 3 guys in whatever order of Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes that are going to score close to 30 fantasy points. If they do, then you got great value. If we get 25 or less from any of those guys, it's probably not great value because there are going to be some other quarterbacks that go later that will be in that range. But Dak is typically the one, and I don't love Jordan Love's ADP right now. I mean, he's just skyrocketing for some reason on CBS. I believe he's now the number 5 or 6 quarterback.
Wow.
Tight ends that I tend to avoid. I just, for whatever reason, I just haven't drafted a lot of Travis Kelce. He's going too soon. I'm not going to say he's a bust, but he's just going in a spot that I don't feel comfortable drafting him. Like in the draft we did today on the Friday episode, round 2, I can't do it. He's going 10 picks based on ADP ahead of Sam Laporta and significantly ahead of almost 20 to 25 picks ahead of Trey McBride and Mark Andrews. I would just rather wait for one of those guys if you're inclined to take one of the top 4 tight ends.
Man, I had this stat on Jordan Love. It was like, he was like the only quarterback in a really long time. I think I have it. Who didn't have 1,000-yard receiver and didn't have 300, fewer than 400 rushing yards and no 1,000-yard receiver. He's the only quarterback that's finished top 5 in the last 7 seasons. Actually, him and Carson Wentz, the only 2 quarterbacks who finished top 5 without 1,000-yard receiver and fewer than 400 rushing yards. It's interesting. He doesn't have like an alpha receiver. He's not a huge rusher. He's a good rusher, not a great rusher. So it is interesting that Love is being pushed up so far. And then, somebody, when we did our tight end preview, because I was taking a lot of Kelce, but when we did our tight end preview, someone said, like, if you guys don't think any of the tight ends are really going to score, 15, 16, 17, huge seasons, right? Why even take one of the first 4, really, was the question. I don't know if you feel like that, but it put things in perspective for me. And I have found myself more in the Kittle, Pitts, Ingram range more frequently than not.
Yeah, that was kind of, I think I kind of been saying that for a while. Like the range last year was 14, right? 13.5 to 14.
14.8, I think, was the most, was Kelce, something like that.
Right. And even McBride, like his stretch of games without Zach Ertz was like 14.9, so, sub 15, whereas Kelce at one point has been like 18,
maybe more than that. Yeah. That is
so if you don't feel like one of them is going to run away from the field, you just, again, you tier it. You take one of the top 4 guys in a range, typically around 4 to 5. You take, I don't know where you want to put Kincaid in the top 4 group or the next 3, so he's kind of the bridge of the trio that you mentioned. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of, you got to feel comfortable with your build. Like the conversation that we had. Should we have taken Malik Neighbors, or was it Neighbors? No, it was Waddle. So we have taken, right? It was Waddle.
Waddle, Laporta, yeah.
Right. Back end of round 3 versus Laporta. And what we passed on 2 top 4 tight ends twice. We passed on Laporta in round 3, and we passed on McBride and Andrews in round 4. So we didn't have that inkling to take one of those guys over Malik Neighbors. So those are the conversations you have to have with yourself.
Right. We decided that Waddle and Neighbors just had much more upside. Obviously, they're not going to finish as high at their position, but more league winning potential, I think, is kind of what we decided without saying it, that Waddle and Neighbors had more league winning potential than Laporta and McBride. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And Andrews. I don't know if everybody, you don't have to agree with that. And that's just kind of where we were at it. Okay.
Right, but I do think, though, it's relevant in the format that we're in, because in a 2-receiver league, did it make more sense to take Laporta, come back and get Neighbors, and then in round 5, we could have taken Cooper?
I think if you had told me that the board was going to fall that way, yeah, I would prefer Laporta, Neighbors, Cooper to Waddle, Neighbors, Pitts. However, I didn't really think that Neighbors would make it back to us in round 4 when we took Waddle. And that's always the risk you take, right? And I know you love Waddle like as a second rounder, basically.
I do.
So to get him 33rd overall or something was just, we couldn't pass it up.
Yep.
All right, good stuff. Thank you, Jamey. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll talk to you Monday on Fantasy Football Today Express.